Tulio Bar-bosa joins me now from London. He's a performance psychology consultant at University College London. So first I want to get your reaction. What was your first reaction when you heard of American gymnast Simone Biles dropping out of the competition?
Yeah, I was positively surprised because what we've seen over the last 48 hours has been something that is essentially unprecedented in the world of sports. This is an athlete who is at the top of her sport and essentially is the flag carrier for the entire sport. For someone of her stature to essentially take a step back, assess the situation, and realize that it wouldn't be healthy to keep going and go against the public perceptions. We have people labeling her as being mentally weak or not being mentally strong enough to compete. It's absurd, and I think she has nothing left to prove, and I do think that it takes a lot of courage to do what she did, and she should be commended for it.
Yeah, we can only imagine the struggles and the pressures, especially now with social media, the labels of the greatest of all time. Walk us through what elite athletes are facing these days.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there, social media being one of the key factors is really a double-edged sword in which the positives from that is that the athletes have direct access to their fans, and they have this almost unfiltered way to communicate honestly with people who support them. But unfortunately, on the other hand, you also have a lot of room for people who are essentially internet trolls, who criticize and say harmful things to athletes who essentially are 1% of the population. So we will, most of the population won't understand what they are truly going through. So it does give a lot of room for people to criticize their every move in a very public way. However, I do feel as though that with this discussion that we're having here today, it opens room to essentially cause some systemic change and some cultural changes at the very top level, which hopefully these conversations around mental health will affect.
And Tulio, we know that there has been more awareness of mental health struggles in recent months with other athletes as well. We have about 30 seconds left. What do you think fans and spectators need to realize?
Yeah, I think this brings us to the front of our minds that athletes are humans first and foremost. These are people who are going through the same issues as we are on a daily basis. Just like we were affected by the pandemic, these are people who are just as affected as us. And sometimes we attribute success to these athletes in terms of medals and winning gold. However, we need to stop, attaching success to these things. And sometimes athletes are unfortunately, judged uh, by the success in which they get at the Olympics. So I do feel it will bring a real sense of mundane, factors around athletes and just how much of humans they are, even though Biles does seem like a superhuman at times.
We saw Naomi Osaka during the French Open. Now we saw Simone Biles. Could we see more?
Yes, certainly. I think now that they've opened essentially the doors for athletes to go against, the system, go against public perception, and really prioritize their mental health. Because after all, mental health is just as important as physical health. So we see a lot of athletes pulling out of events due to physical injuries. So I'm sure we're now going to see more athletes pulling out due to mental injuries and mental health concerns, and rightly so.
And that being said, do you think more mental health professionals and counseling would be available to athletes all over the world? I mean, this is something that when we heard the news, we heard other former Olympic athletes, current athletes come out and say, yeah, we understand, we know what she's going through.
Yeah, certainly. I think the first step, which is occurring now, is having the conversation about the issue. And I think the next step, in order to keep this momentum going, are for the organizations, committees, and federations to meet the demand. So they need to invest in mental sport, mental health, and sports psychology,
All right.
just as they invest in the physical aspect of the sport.